Hi, it is Jen Taub, and I'm sorry to say that I do believe we are, by we I mean the United States, on the brink of war with Iran. And whether Donald Trump decides to unilaterally, and yes, I mean that, more on that in a moment, if Donald Trump decides on his own without the authority from Congress to strike Iran, I would not at all be surprised. So let's talk about what's going on. We can get into some of the legal mumbo jumbo that doesn't really actually matter and talk more about why it would be not in our interest, but definitely Donald would believe it would be in his interest to join Bibi Netanyahu's ongoing attacks against Iran, despite it being, as I said, not in the best interest of the United States. So again, we are, I believe, on the brink of war, and who knows what Donald Trump will decide. Obviously, if he strikes, we are in the war. However, if he holds back, we will be in a taco situation. Trump always chickens out from day to day until he decides one way or another. We are not going to know what Donald Trump's plans are. So let's start with the reasons why we think Donald Trump is going to war. As you know, last Thursday, Israel began its bombing campaign against Iran. We have seen that amped up over the past week. And also recently, the intercontinental ballistic missiles that Iran is firing back at Israel are some, because there have been so many under such a short period of time, being able to penetrate that Iron Dome. They are not all being intercepted. This morning, we're seeing photos of buildings in rubble in Tel Aviv. Now, there have been, according to state media in Iran, I think around 500 deaths in Iran. And then over in Israel, according to the Israeli government, my understanding is it is under 30. Every life lost is a precious life. Those numbers, though, are not huge. And yet there is real fear of devastation as Iran makes a change in how it is defending itself in this war. So let me tell you why I think Donald Trump is itching to get involved and why he might decide to back off. Let's take a look at what he has said on Truth Social. Actually, you know what? Before I get to Donald Trump and what he's saying, I want you to hear from the horse's mouth himself, Bibi Netanyahu. And this is a compilation that CNN has done of clips going back to 1996, my friends. 1996, nearly 30 years ago, right? When, is that really 30 years? It is. Back to almost 30 years ago, 29 years ago, going back to 1996, when Bibi Netanyahu was speaking out about Iran any minute being able to advance a nuclear weapon given their uranium enrichment programs. 1996. Let's listen.
Deadline for attaining this goal is getting extremely close. And Iran, by the way, is also outpacing Iraq in the development of ballistic missile systems that they hope will reach the eastern seaboard of the United States within 15 years. By next spring, at most, by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks, before they get enough enriched uranium for the first bomb. The foremost sponsor of global terrorism could be weeks away from having enough enriched uranium for an entire arsenal of nuclear weapons. That would place a militant Islamic terror regime weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year.
Okay, Did you notice something about the video clips? Did you notice?
Deadline
I'm
for
show this to
attaining
you.
this goal.
Sorry. We started in 1996, and then pretty steadily, we have these clips. But I want you to see the very last one that you were looking at was from June 13th, 2025. That was Friday, right? The day after the attacks by Israel on Iran began, the so-called preemptive bombing campaign. Now, I want you to notice something. That was June 13th, 2025. Oh, look at that. October 2015. What was happening in the intervening years? What was happening was, hello, thanks, Obama, the JCPOA. This is that acronym. It's not an acronym. Those are the letters that talk about the arrangement, the negotiations, the treaty that was entered into between us and Iran. Okay, so let's look at this. So you can see this. This chart here is from the Financial Times. And you can see January of 2016, the JCPOA nuclear deal was implemented. And now you're looking at blue means actual number of installed centrifuges, and pink means planned centrifuges. If you remember from your science class, because I remember those tiny centrifuges, those are things that spin. And the kinds of centrifuges that we are talking about here are not tiny ones. They are used to enrich uranium. Some of it is being used for energy, but others will be used, obviously, in the future, is the thinking for nuclear weapons. Now, to be clear, let me just tell you a little bit more before I look at the chart with you. JCPOA stands for the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Again, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. This was a deal that the U.S. had entered into with Iran. The other countries were. It was July of 2015 by Iran and 6 different countries: China, France, Germany, Russia, the UK, and the United States. Okay. 6 different nations: China, France, Germany, Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom. And the idea was to ensure that their nuclear program would be peaceful. Now, I want you to look. Again, that was during the Obama era. And I'm going to blow that up again for you. Now, look at that. Look at that. The nuclear deal is implemented in January. It's finally executed later in the year. But then you can see there's a gap. These are how many centrifuges are installed. We do not have a number of them there at all being installed in that time period. Then look at the chart. The next thing that happens is May of 2018. That is when Donald Trump decides to withdraw the United States from the deal because he hated anything Barack Obama accomplished. And in the interim, you can see what has happened. We have a huge number of installed centrifuges, right? We're almost at 15,000, and there are more planned. So Donald Trump, as usual, is like the arsonist who set something on fire, and now he's watching it burn. And the thing is, it's really easier for him to do things like he normally does and not get involved by saying this is their war, they fucked this up. But we have seen Donald Trump and the hawks around him advising him having an itchy trigger finger. And part of this, I firmly believe, is Donald Trump had a really pathetic military parade. And he was the laughing stock of the world because while that completely fizzled out, there were record numbers, anywhere between 5 and 8 million people in the streets of the United States protesting his failing regime, his terrible economic policies, his unilateral executive decisions that are often overturned in court, the terrible immigration raids, and on and on and on. And he doesn't like that. And he looks over and he sees what he thinks is a winner. He wants to take credit for what the good parts of what he thinks Israel is doing here. So at first, he was denying U.S. involvement, and now he is using language saying we, taking credit in effect for the fact that the U.S. has provided the funding and or the weapons themselves that are being used. So that is what is happening. Now, you might say to yourself or to me, but Jen, why would he do any more? Can't he just brag? Well, he is, if I see, trying to actually get more involved. So let's look here. He made threats to Khomeini. He said, we know where the so-called, this was yesterday. We know where the so-called, sorry, let me read this over. We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He is an easy target, but is safe there. We are not going to take him out, parentheses, exclamation mark, kill, at least not for now. But we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay. What does he mean by this? He's thinking about how the U.S. came after perhaps Saddam Hussein and captured him. Maybe he's thinking about the various assassinations like of Osama bin Laden. This is basically a threat of assassination. We know where you are. You're an easy target, but we're not going to kill you yet. Can someone take away this man's phone? This is not diplomacy. This is egging him on. Now, Donald Trump, I shouldn't say egging him, this is making this country, if they can survive this attack, only more angry and very unlikely to come to the table. I am, by the way, to make clear, not a big fan of the Iranian regime, or really of any, I would say, religious nationalist kind of empires. They tend to be male-dominant, violent, and crazy, just like how I am very unhappy with the rise of our authoritarian Christian nationalist regime here in the United States. So let's be clear about that. I don't like that people are executed for speaking out against the regime, that women can't choose to uncover their hair, and so on and so on. Nevertheless, I don't want the United States bombing Iran. So let's look at the next one. Donald Trump shouts out on Truth Social, unconditional surrender. I find this to be curious because obviously he is shouting at Iran, you need to surrender, but to surrender to whom? I presume he means surrender to Israel. Surrender to the United States? It's not clear. There is also a triple meaning here. Unconditional surrender. Is Donald Trump surrendering himself? No, I don't think so. But is he surrendering to the people, the hawks around him, to Bibi? I don't know. All of the above. Now let's talk a little bit more about this. Donald Trump left the G7 early. That was in Canada, and he made a fool of himself. We could hear him on a hot mic when he was in a photo shoot with Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, who is the host for the G7. We heard him talking about his parade and how people had predicted 100% chance of rain, but they were wrong. I mean, that was embarrassing. But even more embarrassing, I would have to say, is this photo of Donald Trump where you can kind of see from this image that from the summit. I'm sorry, I've got it right here. I want to pull this up for you. This is from the summit, and it is Donald Trump looking like it's hard to even describe what he resembles here, but let's look here. On your left, you see Carney. You see Donald Trump. Is he half asleep? He looks in profile like an ogre. Actually, he looks more like a vegetable or a mineral than actually an animal. This man is an oaf. And you see Carney with his left eyebrow cocked, staring at Trump with what I would say is disgust. We are all Mark Carney. Now, Donald Trump left the summit early on Monday after he carried water for Vladimir Putin, saying Putin should be part of this. Remember how great it was when it was the G8 and we included him? Yes, Donald, but he was pushed out because of the attack on Ukraine back in 2014, and he has not been let back in. Now, why did he leave early? He was asked many questions about that. He said, in effect, at one point, well, I had to, on Air Force One on Monday, he was implying that he needed to leave early so that he could have conversations, not on the phone with people. In other words, he wanted to talk about Iran in the Situation Room, where he was implying the press could not listen in. The press did ask him some questions about other weird shit that he said, which was on Monday, he put out a True Social post telling everyone to evacuate Tehran. This is a city of maybe 11 million people, to immediately evacuate. The implication being that either Israel or maybe the US was going to bomb. Again, take away this man's phone. So he was asked about this on Monday night on that plane. Here we go.
Thinking on the call for Tehran to evacuate, is there a threat or is there incoming? What was the thinking on the full evacuation?
I want people to be safe, and that's always possible. A thing like that could happen. I just want people to be safe.
This morning, the president said he has not reached out to Iran for peace talks.
Okay, so this was on Fox News. And I want you to know that if you were listening and not looking at your screen, I know it was quiet. However, the what you could see from the video is there were captions below so that you could hear saying, I just want people to be safe. You cannot immediately evacuate a city of 11 million people. What the fuck does he care about anyone being safe? So again, now we have something from his True Social. This is from yesterday. Donald Trump writes, I have not reached out to Iran for quote unquote peace talks in any way, shape, or form. This is just more highly fabricated fake news. If they want to talk, they know how to reach me. They should have taken the deal that was on the table, would have saved a lot of lives. Okay, so what you're seeing here, right there is Donald Trump, again, trying to take credit for the violence that has been directed by Israel, by Benjamin Netanyahu, on to Iran. He is also doing this other thing. The so-called deal was not so different from the deal that had been in place when Obama was president. So again, he set something on fire. He causes a huge problem. And then he says, I have the answers. It's your fault. So Donald Trump is not smart, but he is interested in puffing up his own profile. So this is kind of where we are. Now, I don't know, again, what will happen. Again, he is Taco. The last person with whom he speaks, he listens to, and then decides what he is going to do. So let's actually take a listen to some of the warmongers who are hyping this up. And then we're going to talk about, I know that you have heard about people like AOC and others who are joining in an effort to try to pass a resolution to stop Donald Trump from entering into this, for bombing or entering into this war without congressional approval. So I'll talk about how that is going. Now, some people are describing that as a bipartisan effort, but in reality, there is only one Republican that I am seeing so far come forward. The Republican in the House sponsored this resolution. A bunch of Democrats are supporting him. Then we have a Democratic senator, and other Democrats. There are not enough votes to stop this man, my friends. I am sorry to tell you that, but you should still call. I think he may just be stopped on his own because someone will distract him, maybe with a shiny object. Okay, so let's listen to Ted Cruz hyping the war.
An ICBM to get to America. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, I think the odds are unacceptably high that we would find out with a mushroom cloud over New York City or Los Angeles or Tel Aviv in Israel. And
Oh my God. Come on. This is so inflammatory. I'm not saying I want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, but to raise a specter of a mushroom cloud and just listen to where I just want you to listen to this again.
To get to America. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, I think the odds are unacceptably high that we would find out with a mushroom cloud over New York City or Los Angeles or Tel Aviv.
Oh, New York City, Los Angeles, or Tel Aviv. Like he even cares about Los Angeles. So anyway, this is what he is saying. You're not going to believe what happened next. The worst person in the world. Yes, Tucker Carlson. Maybe not the worst, but he's in the top. Totally grills Ted Cruz. We're going to talk about what he was doing here and why he might have done it. But first, Tucker Carlson did a really good job with this. Why doesn't now Tucker, I know he's not at Fox News, but why don't we have anyone who's an anchor actually ask Donald Trump these kinds of questions? He's asked, or Ted Cruz, these kinds of questions. Let's listen. This is fabulous.
Live in Iran, by the way.
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah,
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's,
because
it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay,
it's not even... You don't know anything about Iran. So
okay, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who
don't know anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump. You're the one who can't figure out if it was a good idea to kill General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
You don't believe they're trying to murder Trump.
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really believe that...
We're carrying out military strikes today.
You said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity.
No, we're not bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
We are supporting
this is
Israel.
High stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war with Iran right now, people are listening.
Okay.
Let them fight. Let them fight. So yes, on around 96 million people live in Iran. Earlier in the capital city, Tehran, I had said it was 11 million. It's closer to like 9.6. I'm sorry, but I don't want to bomb them. I don't need a head count of the country. It is disgusting how Ted Cruz is just going to rapid fire on television, hyping us into justifying an attack on Iran. And in a hot minute, Tucker Carlson can tear him down. Now, you might say, well, how do I manage this if I actually agree with Tucker Carlson? Is Tucker now the good guy? It's not, life isn't that simple. Of course, he's a terrible person. That's not the point. The point is you might agree that we should not enter a war with Iran. Also, you might understand that Tucker has a close relationship, apparently, we have heard, I don't know, with Russia or Russian interests or what have you. And of course, they don't want an attack by the U.S. on Iran. Now, there is more to this, obviously. And I think, I guess where I would turn to now is the question of what can be done and what is likely to happen next. So on that second question, I can't predict the future. I don't know what's going to happen next. I do know that Donald Trump is sitting around meeting with people who are advising him. And I do know that I hope he gets good advice. A word from CNN commentator Michael Shermichael. Let's play that. He has some thoughts.
I think that point is moot now because we're potentially on the brink of launching missiles into a foreign country. And so regardless of what you think about these individuals' experience, the people who are around them, those career individuals, are going to have to advise the hell out of them to make the best decisions to advise the president. My hope is that the president doesn't make this decision. I don't think that this is going to end well for us because there is the opportunity for Iran to retaliate. And if they do that against the bases we have in the region, we will have no choice but to further this. And there's not a single American who wants to send their sons and daughters to another conflict in the Middle East, trillions of dollars potentially of taxpayers. We can't afford it.
Right.
Right. Okay. So this is kind of where we are. I think we're going to have to see more throughout the day what is happening. Again, your guess is as good as mine. But on that front, what can be done? So I think I mentioned to you that there is an effort underway to actually have Congress take a proactive step to stop Donald Trump from engaging in this war. And what is problematic here is some of the misconceptions that I think we all have that, based on the Constitution, I think that we believe that it is Congress who gets to declare war. And of course, Congress, which has the power of the purse and can fund or refuse to fund war. But of course, that the president heads up the armed services. And so what's difficult here, however, is to understand what the hell that means. And I am not an international relations expert or an expert on the War Powers Act. That said, I can tell you that the history here is such that presidents always, often, hundreds of times, have gotten involved in skirmishes and self-defense and advisors and all kinds of things without congressional approval. If you don't think Donald Trump can figure out how to do that, then I have several bridges and cryptocurrencies to sell you. Does that mean you should sit tight and do nothing? No. Get on the phone with your member of Congress or your senator and tell them that you oppose war. Again, it's all going to be up to the whims of Donald Trump, who again is wanting to be a strongman and is itching for domination and often flip-flops Mr. Taco. Trump always chickens out, but it's not clear what direction chickening out would be. Not bombing another country, you might say that's chickening out, but chickening out could be going against what he promised in his first campaign, what he promised recently, that he was against war. I've got our chart here, and wars. Okay? That is not what he's doing. And so far, everything he's promised, he's failed to do so far, other than pardon the January 6th convicts and step up his immigration deportation program. However, on that, he also lied. He said he was going after hardened criminals, and instead, we are seeing them arresting, kidnapping nannies who are watching toddlers in playgrounds, going into fields in California, restaurants and hotels and garment factories and Home Depots, where people who have been working hard, living here peacefully for years, paying taxes, are working or living and ruining their lives. So I don't know. Donald Trump trends towards the sadistic. So I think it's 50-50 that the U.S. will strike Iran in the next few days. And then after that, who knows? He may get distracted and we'll just have to wait and see. So let's talk about what's going on in terms of immigration. Donald Trump had promised, oh, I'm changing my policy. The business folks have called me and told me it's going to hurt their businesses to go after hard workers at hotels and on farms. However, he changed his mind again. So let's listen to what the effect of that is.
There has been some back and forth, though, from the administration, or at least what's been reported, about the location of where some of these immigration raids or focus might be, with President Trump somewhat sending mixed messages about those who work in the hotel sector or the agriculture sector, whether or not there would be exemptions for some of those raids. Could you clarify where DHS stands on the matter? Will those continue?
So worksite operations are very much a cornerstone of our enforcement operations. Oftentimes, these worksites are hubs for drug trafficking, for human trafficking, for labor trafficking. Actually, it was just an operation in Los Angeles that picked up some drug traffickers at a worksite. So this is places where we do find the worst of the worst, these criminal illegal aliens that the president has a mandate to get off of American streets. So we will continue to do that. We'll continue to primarily target these violent criminal aliens. But criminal aliens in this country should know there is no safe haven for them. There's no safe harbor, whether it be a church or a courthouse or a worksite. We will come for you. We will arrest you. You will be deported.
Courthouses. Now, first of all, you know that she's just reading some script. I hate the way young women are being exploited. Someone who could have a strong, good career, and she is just up there parroting the lies, reading a script, and destroying the credibility she could have in the world. Okay, so what is going on in courthouses? Yesterday, the controller of New York, a man who is running for governor of New York, was arrested. Brian Lander was arrested in a courthouse when all he was doing is something he'd been doing for weeks, accompanying migrants into court who had court hearings. And he asked some folks, some ICE officials who were trying to snatch this man away, show me your judicial warrant, not an administrative warrant. Show me your judicial warrant before you try to take this man into custody. You know, because U.S. Constitution, you've heard about it, right? Shall we study what the Fourth Amendment says or nah? So he knows it, right? You know it. We can look at that in a minute. So let's watch what happened. This was a video that was a clip that was put up first by his wife on social media. And then later we got more details and reports from her after he was released from custody. And then he appeared on Chris Hayes. Let's show you the video first.
Do you have a judicial warrant? Do you have a judicial warrant? Can I see the judicial warrant? Can I see the warrant? I will let go when you show me the judicial warrant. Where is it? Where is the warrant? I have it in my hand here. You obstructed. You obstructed. I would like to go see the warrant. I to see the warrant. Put him in custody. No! Take it back. Take it back. Take it back. Step back. You don't have authority. You don't have authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Sir, you don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. You don't have. I'm not obstructing. I'm standing right here in the hallway. I asked to see the judicial warrant. By asking for a judicial warrant? You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens asking for a judicial warrant. Stay back. Stay back. No, ma'am, for your own safety. For your own safety.
I can't believe you're arresting me. Where are you taking him? Hello? Hi,
You have no authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Where are you taking me? And with what authority?
I think there is too. Why are you arresting
And with what authority?
And where are you taking him?
Step back, please. Security detail. This number one is going to go with him, all right? Hang on, please, number one. Hold on.
Yes, that happened yesterday. What do you think of that? What do you think of that? Let's listen to what Lander had to say. This is unspeakable. And yet this is not the first time it's happened to a high-level official, and obviously happening across the country to ordinary people, right? Think about the fact that the members of the Minnesota legislature were approached by someone who was pretending to be a police officer. And that's probably why they answered the door, and they were shot or murdered. Think about the fact that people who are wearing masks are pulling up in vans and snatching people off the street. Who are they? They're not always, even, first of all, the ones who are ICE officers or Homeland Security, already this is problematic and unlawful. But we don't even know those who are just kidnapping people, because we have seen press about folks coming into shops like and robbing a car wash of its cash. This is very, very dangerous. Okay. But let's focus specifically on Lander. He was asking a couple of things for the judicial warrant to see it. They wouldn't show him. And then they cuffed him and he said, under what authority are you arresting me? You can't, you're ICE. You can't arrest a US citizen. That happened, right? Happened to him. We also saw a US senator from California, Alex Padilla, cuffed, thrown to the ground, cuffed and detained briefly for just asking Chrissy Noem, Secretary Noem, a question. We also saw several members of Congress arrested for going to an ICE facility to exercise their constitutional duty of oversight, and charges brought against them. The mayor, of course, of Newark also arrested, those charges dropped. So this is happening, and this is fascism, and I have yet to see an adequate response from the Democratic Party. More on that. Let's go listen to Lander.
On the video, and, you know, it kept going well after we were separated.
Did it feel like you were getting roughed up?
I mean,
guys, look at this. So on the video, I don't know, you know, we just saw one angle. Look at this photo. I'm just going to blow this up big before we continue with him talking to Hayes. These are big guys. One is wearing a mask. They're not wearing uniforms. They don't have name tags. They are grabbing an elected official, someone who is running for mayor of New York. In they have ranked choice voting. They're having a primary. He's a candidate in the primary. He is actually the controller of New York, and they are roughing him up. Do you see this? One is in a mask. None of them are identified. Very aggressively, they're in jeans and work boots. This is happening right now in America. Okay, let's continue to play this.
You know, it was, yes.
It was not gentle.
No, it was not gentle.
So then what happened after they took you, like, after you disappear?
Yeah.
Where do you go, and what do they tell you about why are they detaining you? What do they have you for?
So, honestly, I heard very little. And of course, the case, you know, they have not brought charges, but apparently the U.S. Attorney's Office says they're still reviewing the case. So I don't know exactly what they will come back with. You know, DHS put that preposterous statement out that everyone could see is not what is happening on the video. But they didn't tell me any of that. You know, they did take me to a detention room. They took the cuffs off, and I just sat for 3.5 hours in a detention room. Part of what's fascinating
but wait, but they didn't tell you? Like, you're just in there, there's nothing?
Nothing.
Come on.
I'm telling you, I sat for 3.5 hours in a detention room.
But nothing. I mean, and they know exactly who you are. They know what they're doing.
They do.
They knew who you were.
They knew who I was. There's no doubt they knew I was the controller and, you know, talked to me about that.
3 hours in a detention room. Are you okay with this? Now, obviously, this is what Donald Trump and his administration are doing, and the Republicans are almost entirely to blame for this. But I want to let you know, because you know I'm often reporting on that terrible crypto bill, that yesterday, that bill passed in the Senate. You remember last week, we were talking about how it made it through cloture, which is it got through the vote to close debate. And I was disappointed that many U.S. senators had voted for that bill. And that had happened, that cloture vote had happened before Alex Padilla, the U.S. Senator, was thrown to the ground. However, it had happened after these incredibly violent raids were going on, this unlawful activity by Donald Trump. So yesterday, we had that bill pass, this terrible bill, the so-called Genius Act. And we've had shows on this. I had Corey Freyer from the Consumer Federation of America go through my problems with this bill. And unlike international relations, which is not my area of expertise, my entire focus of my career for the past, I would say it's now getting to nearly 30 years, 25 years at least. The focus of my career has been financial market regulation at the intersection of banking regulation as well as white collar crime. That is what I do. I follow the money. I've worked in the financial sector. I think this crypto bill is shit, and I think it's bad, and I think it's a piece of a giant bailout of the kleptocrats as well as the edgelords who always said they didn't need to have the support of any government, but now they're going to be getting that support with our regulated institutions offering this kind of cryptocurrency. And it is also a huge boost for people like Donald Trump, a way for him to make billions of dollars. And so it was, what they should have done is there shouldn't have been a single vote in support of this legislation, even though the bill had already made it through cloture. At this point, after the troops being put into the streets of U.S. cities, after these arguments Donald Trump is making in court that they can ignore the law and over the authority of the governor of California, federalize these National Guard members, and they will have the Marines, God knows doing what, and Donald Trump threatening Democratic cities. And what do this handful, more than a handful, I think it's like 16 or 18 Democrats do? They vote for this bill. And many of them are not up for re-election anytime soon. And one of them is Alex Padilla. And so I'm disgusted, right? I am disgusted by that. And one of them, of course, is my senator. But there we have it. And people wonder if they're taking this seriously, do they have respect for the Democrats and the people on the ground who are doing all the hard work at the state level, at the protests, at the rallies? The Democratic Party needs an overhaul. And there's some good news on that front. I think we get there. But this is what's happening in the world. Maybe they will wake up. Now, speaking of, one last thing. We've dealt with the brink of war. We've talked about the violence against state officials in this country. And we have also now, as well as the radical, unlawful treatment of immigrants in this country. But now we need to talk about the really crappy budget bill. This is supposed to be the central focus of the Trump's economic plans, this budget bill, and it's really bad. And when you have the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, right, he's the Chuck Schumer counterpart. Chuck is in the minority and doing nothing to help us at this point. He should, other than get in the way. Senator Thune gets on television and lies, and even Fox News calls him out. Let's listen to that.
Today you have the Committee for a Responsible Budget coming out and saying that, in its current form as written, it will add $15 trillion to the debt. We're already at $37 trillion. What do you say to people who look at that and say, I thought we were going in the other direction? What happened to a more responsible budget?
Well, we are, and this will reduce the deficit, not increase it. And the reason for that is, one, we are going to have the biggest spending reduction in history. But secondly, all the other things I mentioned, Martha, are going to generate growth in the economy. And when the economy is growing and expanding and people are investing, you get more government revenue. And the standard rule of thumb is for about 1% increase in GDP, in growth in the economy, you get about $3 trillion of additional tax revenue. So the goal here is pro-growth policies that will get the economy growing and expanding, coupled with more fiscal austerity, fiscal responsibility. There'll be $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion in spending cuts in here, biggest spending reduction in America, in American history. And I think those two things together will mean that we will be reducing and getting that deficit trending down instead of trending up. What a lot of those folks don't do is they don't take into consideration what happens when you put pro-growth policies in place. And that is you get economic growth and you get more government revenue.
Yeah,
so
they score,
most of them are using static models.
They score without taking into account the growth side of the equation.
Okay, come on. Come on. That was a lot of gobbledygook, right? The reality here is there's huge disapproval for this bill. This is a huge spending cutback. Let's talk about the disapproval.
There
we go.
is support for this mega bill.
You know, I'm really surprised when I look at polling data. I look at it every day. But the amount of disapproval for this bill, holy cow, my goodness gracious. And, you know, you mentioned the KFF poll. We're talking about 29 points underwater on the net favorable rating. But that matches the Quinnipiac University poll from last week when it was 26 points underwater. Oh, my God, you need Greg Louganis to get that far underwater. And, I mean, we're talking about a negative 41 net favorability rating among independents in the center of the electorate. You rarely ever see pieces of legislation or proposed pieces of legislation as unpopular as this. But here you see it in two polls, 26 points underwater and 29 points underwater. No good.
All right.
Okay, that guy is super annoying, but you heard it. Very, very unpopular. And I have more. Let's hear about the spending cutback.
All right, breaking just moments ago, new data showing consumers cut back spending sharply last month. CNN's Matt Egan here on the spot with the new numbers. What do you learn?
Well, Sarah, look, consumer spending is the engine of the U.S. economy, and that engine seems to be sputtering a bit right now, right? We just learned that retail sales during the month of May fell sharply by 0.9%. That is worse than expected. This is the biggest monthly drop since January, and it's actually the second month in a row where we're seeing a negative number here because April was revised lower. Originally reported as a slight increase, now it is a slight decrease. So why is this happening? Well, this does appear to at least partially being driven by a hangover from tariffs, right? A lot of Americans, they were scrambling to try to beat the clock on tariffs by buying stuff before they went up in price due to import taxes. Right. Now there's a give back, and that makes sense, right? I mean, chances are if you bought a car in March to beat auto tariffs, you're not going to be buying that car in April or May.
Okay, and that's what we thought. People were worried, and they were buying. So we see some spending cutbacks. Donald Trump's economy isn't doing well. He's with the tariffs. He's against the tariffs. He signed something. He dropped the papers at the summit. He's taco on everything. We have no actual idea how to predict what is happening next, including a potential war. Now, I need to add something before we get to Crazy Town. You may say, because this is the missing piece, what is stopping Donald Trump and Congress from just sending more weapons to Israel to fight the war on their own? Well, a couple things. Even assuming that got funded, there is a certain capacity. Apparently, there's some kind of bunker bomber thingy, and I don't know much about this. I'm only hearing about it in the news, and not an expert in this. But there's a certain kind of bunker bomber with a huge payload that we would never let another country fly. Our people know how to fly it. I think it's based in Missouri, and that would be in order to get to some of these underground bunkers where this uranium is being refined or something. Again, I'm not an expert, that we would have to do this. That's one thing. Another thing, why does Israel need our help and our funding now in this new war front that they have launched? Is because in order to repel these incoming IBCM, they need these rockets. They're going to need, they need more equipment, right, for their Iron Dome. Also, we're hearing that although Iran may have gone through about a third of their ammunition, they may be slowing down and dragging this out, making this not a quick regime change, but a long-term short-term war. And to the extent that Bibi is trying to convince Donald Trump and others that he could be in and out quickly, and if we somehow engage in this bunker bombing and go all in, maybe this will end and he can take credit for it. That is kind of where we are. God knows, no matter what, I think this is ugly as it is. And I really hope that somehow the better angels of someone's nature figure out a way to find a shiny object to distract Donald Trump so we do not go all in a war with Iran. Now, let's play some Crazy Town. Here we go. Crazy Town is the fact, once again, that no one in the Trump administration has any idea what he is doing next. And again, we have a clip from Tammy Bruce. And notice how he always puts mostly women as spokespeople out in public, and doesn't give them any information, makes them not look capable or competent when they definitely are or could be. And I've got two parts, speaking of this, of Crazy Town. So let's first look at Tammy Bruce being asked a question. You know, she is representing the State Department. You would think Marco Rubio would have a clue of what's going on. Let's listen to her comments here.
Door to diplomacy with Iran on its nuclear program still open from the U.S. perspective?
That would be a decision made by President Trump.
Have you heard from the Iranians signaling interest in continuing discussions?
That is not something that I can speak to.
So basically, we can't find out anything from our government. Now, second part of Crazy Town, let's play it. This is even better. So these women are put in positions of authority, maybe young, maybe not given a lot of information. I would never work for the Trump administration, but nevertheless, they're not the only women in positions of authority. And let's look at, this is the craziest of Crazy Towns. This is what it's like to kind of be sometimes a woman in the United States. Okay, so yesterday on True Social, Meredith Whitaker had posted some article. And in response, Bill Mitchell, some rando who goes by Ask Bill Mitchell, said Signal will some sort of LLM integration in it soon. Let me translate that. I think he meant to say Signal, which is that, you know, that chat app, will have some sort of large language model integration in it soon. What does that mean? He means some kind of so-called AI. You know how right now when you are sometimes trying to type on your phone or into Facebook or what have you, it tries to complete your sentences with AI or do your search for you? That's what he's suggesting. Meredith Whitaker, in response, writes the word no and puts a heart after that. Then Bill Mitchell responds to Meredith Whitaker, they will likely be timing up with Anthropic's Claude of Perplexity, but it's coming. The engineers have already begun laying out the groundwork for such support. And then in response, Meredith Whitaker says, back to Bill Mitchell, he says to Signal's president, friends, do you know what's going on here? Meredith Whitaker is literally the president of Signal. She runs the fucking place. She's IFC, as people say, in fucking charge. And Bill Mitchell didn't bother to even look at her profile to see with whom he was arguing. When she said no and put the heart, that might have been a good time for him to look, but no. And let me ask you, do you think this man, Bill Mitchell, has taken down this post? No. In the crazy town of his mind, he has doubled and even tripled down, saying that he knows more than the president of a company as to what her plans are for that company. I kid you not. And let me add one more thing. It's easy to dunk on Bill Mitchell, but he's not alone. It's not just Bill Mitchell. It's not just a lot of men. It's women. It's a lot of people who question or presume that women in authority, who, for example, are president of a company, let's say senator of a U.S. senator from a state, maybe even a vice president, law degree, presume that they are incompetent and choose someone like Donald Trump and allow for people like Pete Hegseth that are trying to pretend to us that these men, like Donald Trump, who is a racist, sexist, adjudicated rapist, convicted criminal, ne'er-do-well, moron, should be leading the world. And every day of my life, I will point that out. And I'm not bitter. I'm pretty lucky as it goes, being a woman in this country. But I will let you know that it's clear to me that we have a lot of work to do here in America to deal with sexism and the intersection of sexism and racism. And yes, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, was an effort to deal with that. But of course, the backlash was strong and fierce. But we should never give up. Love you guys. Mwah. See you tomorrow morning, right here, same time, same place.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, how come everyone? Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show. Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, how come everyone? Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show.